It is a crucial time to be an Indian football fan. The national team is coming off some very strong results. Remember the Intercontinental Cup, which is of course hosted in India, they did really well. Thereafter ended up claiming the SAF Cup. The side are more often than not playing some good football as well, and the rewards of a lot of the hard work that has been put in by current head coach Igor Stimac can be felt pretty acutely at last, because you're finally seeing the national team develop a sense of style and identity when it comes to their play, and more consistently be able to do well against opponents who in theory should be better than them because they are ranked higher in the FIFA rankings. However, it is also a crucial time for the sport because there's a lot of tournaments that are coming up in the not so distant future. In fact, if you go by just at the end of 2023 itself, you will have not only an Asian Games, you'll also have qualifiers for the AFC Asian Under-23s, as well as AFC Asian Cup and World Cup qualifiers for the next round. So it's going to be a very busy time for Indian football as a whole, and obviously fans around the country are desperate to see the national team do very well, because truth be told, whether or not you are a supporter of Club A, Club B or even Club C or D, everyone is invested in seeing the national team do well. But there are plenty of reports doing the rounds that there might be some discomfort among certain fans or rather certain clubs when it comes to releasing players for in national duty, and that can be something that it's not a new debate or a concept that we're seeing in the world of football. But right now, when it comes to the Indian football side of things, it is of course pretty evident that most people want to see the national team do well and would therefore be okay with clubs releasing the players in the easiest way possible. However, there has been plenty of talk about, let's say, clubs trying to do what they can to hold on to their players rather than release them for national duty, which has prompted once again Igor Stimac to take to social media and make an appeal. I mean, you'd remember he did that during the entire campaign for the Indian football team to be allowed to participate in the Asian Games, and that worked out great. This time around, he's once again gone the same social media route, posted a long note. What we'll do in this video is we'll take a look at some of the key talking points which he touched upon, and then debate over whether or not what he's saying is correct, incorrect, however you want to look at it. First off, he's spoken about, he's addressed the clubs directly. He said, I want to ask our clubs to support our request for longer camps through November and December prior to the World Cup qualifiers and AFC Asian Cup. Now, in case you're wondering what exactly this means, generally speaking, an international team will only be assembling and meeting for short periods of time before, let's say, friendly matches or tournaments, because clubs will be taking up the majority of the players' time. What Stimac is doing is asking the clubs to be a little bit more understanding and ensure that these players are available not just for the tournaments but also for long camps that are going to be held before the tournament, because in his view, those long camps are the best way to not only foster, let's say, team harmony and team spirit, but also to keep working on things that will ensure that the national team stays successful at the top level. And it's a perfectly reasonable request when you're looking at it that way. But of course, as we'll discuss later on, is not one that clubs are necessarily entitled to, let's say, agree on just because. But this isn't the only thing he's talked about. He also said, and this is his appeal directly to coaches, he said that you, dear coaches, know best that short preparation time is killing any hopes for us doing well in these major tournaments. Now, in case you wonder why it is he's appealing to coaches, is because, well, a lot of the times it will be in the hands of the coach whether or not the players are released by the club, or sometimes, of course, it may be that the club take that opportunity. But generally speaking, a coach himself, if you're a coach of a club, you do not want to be letting go of your players unless absolutely necessary. And these camps, while necessary to Stimac, might not be seen as too necessary by a lot of these club managers. So hence, he's spoken directly to the coaches and said that, look, you know that short preparation time can be a momentum killer of sorts. So please let these players be a part of, let's say, these camps. And in fact, he's even gone on further to talk about which are the tournaments he wants players free for. He's saying that I urge all clubs to continue supporting our national team through some major tournaments: the AFC Under-23 qualifiers, the Asian Games, the World Cup qualifiers, and of course the AFC Asian Cup. Now, if you're wondering why it is he's name checked all of these tournaments right here, it's because these are the tournaments he's wanting players for, and the AFC Under-23 qualifiers is doubly important because there are reportedly talks that a lot of clubs aren't very happy having to release players for the Under-23 qualifiers. It's one thing you do it for international windows or tournaments like the AFC Asian Cup, which of course come under FIFA jurisdiction, so clubs have no choice. But AFC Under-23 qualifiers, we have seen in the past that clubs, not just in India but even across Europe, will not necessarily release their top players for Under-23 tournaments, and that is entirely in the discretion of the club. There's not much that anyone can do, which is why it's interesting he brings this up. Of course, for Asian Games too, it's similar because that's an Under-23 tournament. He'd need the clubs to cooperate and ensure that they are available. World Cup qualifiers, of course, that is something that will fall under the FIFA window, and of course the AFC Asian Cup. But what he's done interestingly is linked both of these, because for the AFC Under-23 qualifiers and Asian Games, he'll be using more or less the same squad because both are, of course, Under-23 tournaments. But the Asian Games will also feature 3 senior pros in, of course, Sunil Chhetri, Gurpreet Singh Sandhu and Sandesh Jhingan, who he'd want to keep match fit and sharp for the World Cup qualifiers and the AFC Asian Cup. So it's all very interlinked. But the real question is, will this appeal succeed? There's a reason Stimac has gone the route of, asking for things publicly. It's because it has worked out well for him in the past. If you remember, as I mentioned earlier in the video, when the entire stir was going around about letting the Indian football team participate in the Asian Games, at that point Stimac had very publicly posted an appeal to not just, of course, all the relevant authorities, but even the PM and the Sports Minister of India. So he knows that that's a good way to ensure that his message gets out in the open, especially when you consider the fact that in this case there's going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of parties involved, and probably the best way to go about things is to ensure that there is, let's say, public support going his favor. Because if the public really catches on to this, as we saw with the hashtag Indian Football for Asian Games movement, then there's no stopping whether or not he gets his wish. Of course, it is worth remembering that this is something that perhaps we need to be working with a better understanding of in the future, because again, as I said, whilst there will be a lot of talk about club versus country and country comes first, that's never been the way football as a sport operates. In fact, more often than not, because it is the clubs that are keeping players employed through the majority of the years, and there's maybe only few international games here or there, it is in fact the clubs who have a bigger say, unless of course, as I said, it's a friendly window or qualifiers for the AF or your Continental or World Cup or events like that. That's when, of course, these clubs have no choice but to release players for these events. But generally speaking, for a lot of these, as I said, they fall within a not so gray area. You might think it's a gray area, but it's pretty clear that it's the clubs who have total control. So maybe rather than ensuring that the head coach has to actually go out there and make these appeals every time, there needs to be a better focus and harmony of an understanding within the Indian football ecosystem, because we've seen in recent times that there has been a little bit of confusion. On one hand, you had the AIFF president say that the 3 senior players will definitely be playing. Then a squad was named that didn't feature those seniors. Then you had to apply for special accreditation. Then rumors emerged that maybe the players weren't sure if the clubs would release them. Then eventually they chose to stick to their guns. So there's plenty of moving parts, and truth be told, if you want the Indian football team to do well and also capture the public imagination, one, you need to ensure that the focus, at least for the short term, stays on the national team, whilst also ensuring that clubs are not actually let's say put on the back burner or given less importance, because the footballing ecosystem needs these clubs to employ players to ensure that they're well paid, because again, they won't be getting that much money for just playing for their national team. So it's a delicate balance, and one that needs to be struck in the not so distant future. As for right now though, it does seem like these players will be available, but in a rather begrudging way. But what's your take on this entire matter, and do you think that something needs to be done to ensure that Stimac maybe doesn't constantly make one public appeal after another in order to get his way, and that things can be sorted out in a more smooth manner? You can let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon, leave us a comment, follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Don't forget to download the SportsTak app, and if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos that we've done. But for now, from my side, it is goodbye.